On a scorching July afternoon in 2014, Samuel Okonkwo stood at the edge of his 12-acre field in Nsukka, Nigeria, and did something that immediately started a rumor. He planted two crops in one field, not side by side, not in separate rows, intercropped, maize and cowpea, sharing the same soil, the same sunlight, the same rainfall, the same everything. People stopped their trucks. They walked over from neighboring farms. They stared. Not a small laugh. A real laugh. "Samuel has lost his mind," one woman said. She didn't whisper it. She said it loud enough for him to hear. He kept planting. By sunset, 12 people had heard. By morning, 40. By Thursday, everyone in Nsukka knew. Nobody had ever done that. At least not in Nsukka. The impossible action was simple to describe, but hard to understand. Samuel Okonkwo was planting maize and cowpea together in the same field at the same time. Not in separate blocks. Not in rotation. Together. Intercropped. His neighbor, Emmanuel Udeh, a man with 40 years of farming experience, walked over from his own field. He stood at the fence line. He shook his head. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard," Emmanuel said. "Maize needs sun, cowpea needs shade. They'll fight each other, they'll both die, you'll end up with nothing." Samuel didn't argue. He didn't explain. He just kept planting. Emmanuel walked back to his truck. He didn't look back. By sunset, 12 people had heard. By morning, 40. By Thursday, everyone knew. They gave him a nickname. Samuel the Fool. It stuck. To understand why Samuel did this, you need to understand what happened to his father. Go back to 2007. Samuel's father, Obi Okonkwo, was the most respected farmer in Nsukka. He grew yams. Only yams. 50 acres of them. He sold to markets in Enugu, Onitsha, even Lagos. He employed 15 workers. He sent Samuel to university in Ibadan. Then came 2008. The yam market crashed. Prices dropped 70% in 6 months. A disease called yam mosaic virus swept through the region. Obi lost 80% of his harvest. Every evening, Obi sat on his porch and stared at his fields. Every morning, he woke up and checked prices. Every week, another buyer canceled an order. For 3 years, the Okonkwo family survived barely. They sold the truck. Then, the second tractor. Then they let workers go. One by one, 15 became 10, 10 became 5, 5 became 2. Samuel watched his father transform from a confident businessman into a worried man who checked the sky every morning. In 2011, Obi died. Stress, the doctor said. But Samuel knew. His father died of dependence. A farm depending on one crop wasn't really a business. It was a gamble. Samuel started asking questions. Why do we grow only one thing? What if prices crash? What if disease comes? What if the rains don't come? The usual response. That's just farming. Samuel hated that answer. It wasn't an answer. It was an excuse. One dry season evening in 2013, Samuel attended an agricultural seminar at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Most farmers ignored these events. Too academic, too theoretical, too far from the soil. Samuel didn't ignore it. A professor named Dr. Amara Nwosu mentioned an ancient practice. Intercropping, not new. In fact, it was ancient. African farmers had done it for centuries before colonial agriculture pushed for monocultures. The maize provides structure. Dr. Nwosu explained. The cowpea fixes nitrogen in the soil. The cowpea shades the ground, keeping moisture. The maize stalks give the cowpea something to climb. They don't compete, they cooperate. Samuel stayed behind for 2 hours asking questions. He got research papers. He spent 6 months studying them. Every evening after farm work. Every morning before sunrise. The more Samuel learned, the more obvious something became. This wasn't experimental. This wasn't risky. This was proven. For centuries. Nobody in Nsukka tried it because everyone assumed somebody else already knew best, and nobody questioned it. That rainy season, Samuel decided to test the idea. He started small, 2 acres, not his best land, his worst land, the rocky corner near the road where nothing grew well. He planted maize in rows. Between the rows, he planted cowpea. The setup looked unusual. Neighbors noticed. Even people driving past slowed down. Emmanuel Udeh came back. The same man who had laughed 4 months earlier. He stood at the fence line again. This time, he didn't laugh. "What in the world are you doing?" Emmanuel asked. "Trying something different," Samuel said. "Different doesn't always mean smart. Have you tried it?" Emmanuel paused. No, then how do you know? Emmanuel had no answer. He turned and walked back to his truck. That conversation repeated dozens of times. Everybody knew it would fail. Nobody knew why. Harvest season arrived. And something interesting happened. The maize grew tall, taller than usual. The stalks were thicker. The ears were fuller. The cowpea climbed the maize stalks like natural trellises. The pods were heavy. The leaves were dark green. The soil between the rows stayed moist even during dry spells. Visitors noticed. Even critics noticed. But nobody wanted to admit it. Because appearances mean nothing in farming. Numbers mean everything. Samuel harvested the maize first, 4.2 tons per acre. His usual yield was 3.1 tons. Then the cowpea, 1.8 tons per acre. He had never grown cowpea before. It was pure additional income. He sat at his kitchen table that evening. He calculated. He stared at the numbers. Then he calculated again. 47% more profit than traditional monoculture. Not 10%. Not 20%. 47%. On his worst land, the numbers spread. Some were surprised. Some claimed it was luck. One season doesn't prove anything. The following year, Samuel expanded. 80 acres. The year after, 100. Then, 150. Samuel the Fool became Samuel the Smart. The nickname changed meaning. Then came 2016. The year that changed everything. The maize market crashed. Global oversupply. Prices dropped 60% in 4 months. Nigerian farmers who grew only maize watched their income disappear. Some couldn't afford fertilizer for the next season. Every week, another farm disappeared. Bankruptcies, auctions, families leaving land their grandparents had farmed. Emmanuel Ude was hit hardest. He grew only maize, 200 acres of it. He had laughed at Samuel in 2014. Now, in October 2016, he stood at Samuel's door, exhausted, older, defeated. He didn't speak for a full minute. Then, I might lose the farm. Samuel nodded. He understood. Tell me about the intercropping, Emmanuel said. Samuel spent 3 hours explaining. The spacing, the timing, the varieties, the soil preparation. Emmanuel took notes in a small notebook. His hands shook slightly. I should have listened years ago, Emmanuel said. You listened when it mattered, Samuel replied. Emmanuel adopted intercropping the next season. So did 4 other farmers who had watched Samuel's results. The year after, 10 more, then 20, then 30. The idea spread rapidly, not because it was fashionable, because it worked. In 2018, researchers from the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture arrived. They studied Samuel's fields. They ran tests. Their findings were clear. Intercropping increased total yield by 35 to 50%. It reduced pest damage by 40% because cowpea attracted beneficial insects. It improved soil nitrogen by 60 kilograms per hectare. It reduced erosion because the ground stayed covered year-round. Papers were published. Conferences invited Samuel to speak. The same practice once considered foolish was now receiving scientific recognition. A reporter from Lagos asked Samuel about his newfound fame. I'm not famous, Samuel said. I was just trying to keep the farm. The reporter waited for more. That was all he got. Years passed. Samuel's operation thrived. Not every season was perfect. Droughts came, floods came, pests came. In 2020, armyworms destroyed 30% of the maize. In 2021, excessive rain rotted some cowpea pods. Nothing about farming became easy. But Samuel had built resilience into the system. In 2022, his son, Chidi, returned from university, agricultural economics degree. He stood with his father one evening, watching the sunset over 150 acres of intercropped fields. Did people really laugh at this? Chidi asked. Oh yes, Samuel said, because it was different. That's all. Usually that's enough. Were you ever scared? Every day. Then why continue? Samuel was quiet for a moment. The sun touched the horizon. Because I wasn't afraid of failing. I was afraid of never trying. In 2024, Samuel handed daily operations to Chidi. The methods remained. Every season, someone asked why they intercropped. Chidi gave the same answer his father would have given, because 1 harvest is a hope, 2 harvests are a plan. Samuel Okonkwo died in March 2026. He was 67. The funeral filled St. Paul's Anglican Church beyond capacity. People stood outside. Over 400 farmers came. Some had adopted intercropping. Some had not. All respected the man who asked questions. The pastor spoke. Some follow tradition because it feels safe. Others respect tradition but still ask questions. Samuel asked questions. Emmanuel UDEH, now 78, stood up slowly. He walked to the front. He didn't prepare a speech. Samuel wasn't smarter than everybody, Emmanuel said. He was just willing to look foolish longer than the rest of us. Samuel's gravestone overlooks his land. The inscription reads, "He planted 2 seeds where others planted 1, and grew a future." Never assume the crowd is right. Never reject an idea simply because it's unfamiliar. And never forget that the people laughing today may someday be asking how you did it. Samuel wasn't saved by luck. He was saved by preparation. One harvest gave income. The second gave security. Together, they gave a future. And sometimes the future begins the moment you decide to plant differently.